we actually met was October 23rd, 2019. And our last scheduled meeting was March 11th, 2020, which we had to cancel. And so we're here on June 8th, 2021. Between that time, I've had two grandsons graduate from high school. And I also have one who now wears the same size shoes that I do. All right. So tonight we're going to hear from the technical team on where we are today and are going to look at some potential revisions that the CAC may consider taking to the board. Now, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now I turn it over to Laura at this time.
Well, welcome back. We're so excited to see you. And if we could have the screen go to the agenda, then I'll walk through the agenda. So tonight, as Richard said, very excited to have all of you back. And we will, after I go through the agenda, we'll do introductions of all of you participants on the CAC. We'll have time for public comment. And then the main part of the meeting is the Project 2030 update. After you hear all that, then we'll open it up for questions. You'll get into breakout groups like you do when you're in person, but you'll be in breakout groups to come up with some questions. We'll take a break, and then during that time, the staff and the consultants will be able to look at the questions, identify who's going to answer what. Then we'll come back and we have a good amount of time for Q&A. There is then a discussion of a policy recommendation related to the presentation, some other reports, again, time for public comment, and we will wrap after we find out what you're taking away from tonight. We'll wrap by 9 o'clock. And if we finish sooner, we'll finish sooner. So that's what our agenda is for tonight. So let me go through, since we're not sitting in the room and I can't just start with someone and then the next person next to them introduces themselves. Why don't I just call your name? One of the protocols that we'll use for this is that we'll all be on mute unless we're talking. So if everyone can mute themselves until we're talking. And but when I call your name, unmute yourself, just introduce yourself. And that was fun, Richard, to hear about your 3 grandkids. So if you want to say one thing, that would be that each of you that introduce yourself. And this will count as the roll call also. When we finish that, then Madeline will call the names of anyone who is not participating. Okay, so let's start with Jody Ash.
Good evening, everybody. Jody Ash here, also known as Bubby. Eager to sit in on this meeting and learn what I can learn.
Great, thank you, Jody. How about Kimberly? I'm not sure if Kimberly is able to join us, so it's not looking like it.
No, I'm here.
You're here, yes.
I'm here.
Wonderful.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Berg. I'm the owner of Citrus Heights Car Wash. Happy to be here.
Great, and Ray Bulkey.
I'm Ray Bulkey, a resident. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Cartwright. And how about Michael?
Yes, Michael Goebel. I'm a resident here now 40 years.
Thank you, Michael. And how about Suzanne?
I am here also, and very much enjoying the cooler weather. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Suzanne. Andrew? Andrew Johnson.
It's the right Andrew this time.
Yes, Andrew
And
Johnson.
Andrew Johnson, I'm a CAC resident.
Great, thank you. And James Monteaton? James, are you with us? We'll catch you when you arrive. How about Richard Moore?
Hi, everybody. I'm Rick Moore. I'm one of the residents, and it's really nice to see all of you again. Hope you're all doing well.
Great to see you too. Thank you. And Jenna Mosier? I see Jenna on the screen, but I don't hear you, Jenna. So we'll pick you up if you come back in. And Richard, you introduced yourself originally since you're leading our meeting tonight. And Mike?
I'm Mike Nishimura, and I'm here in the office.
If I could just chime in, if you're in the boardroom, please use the microphone that's at your table. And if you click it, a green light will turn on and you will be able to talk.
Would you like to try that again, Mike?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, perfect.
Okay,
Great.
I'm here.
All right, great. Thank you. And Javed? We'll catch him when he comes in. And Alan?
Hi, I'm Alan Etzig. I'm a 46-year resident. I'm also the locomotive engineer of the orange and red locomotive in my background.
Oh, I love that in your background. Thank you. And Madeline, did you want to call the other names?
Yes, so if you are in attendance, please let us know that you're here. Catherine Cooley, Julie Byers, Wes Irvin, Doug McTaggart, Dave Mitchell, Cindy Price, Deborah Walker, and I see that Jennifer she is here. All right, that is it for roll call. Thank you.
And Jenna, I see, did you want to introduce yourself?
If I unmuted, it works.
You are unmuted. Yes, thanks. Great. Okay, well, I will turn it back to Richard for public comment.
At this time, we'll open the public comment period for items that do not appear on the agenda. Members of the public may make comments up to 3 minutes for any item that does not appear on the agenda. Do we have any public comment at this time?
I've not received any public comment cards. Is there anyone who is dialed in by phone that would like to make a public comment? All right, there's no public comment.
So Richard, are you closing public comment then?
Yes, I didn't press the button. And this will close the public comment period. And now I turn it over to Missy.
All right, thank you, Richard, and welcome everyone. My name is Missy Pieri, Director of Engineering, District Engineer for the Citrus Heights Water District. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So tonight we're going to provide an update on the district's Project 2030 water main replacement study. So since the last time we met on this project, which was in late 2019, it's been that long. We have done some additional preparatory work. So we plan to go over this work in tonight's presentation. So although our lives have been disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic, the CHWD team has been working diligently on this project. Tonight, we will provide an update on the district's financial position, which has changed. It's actually improved since the CAC selected the preferred alternative back in 2019. And then finally, we will review the CAC selected alternative 5.4 that was, that they chose back in 2019. And we're going to provide an update on this alternative and then seek the CAC's consideration of the revised alternative. So with that, I will pass it off to Andrew with Harris and Associates.
Thank you, Missy.
I wanted to start with a slide that hopefully brings fond memories of our workshops and the building blocks of our study. We spent a significant time on these building blocks, covering a wide range of topics from asset management all the way to phasing and implementation. If you remember what happens when we put all those together, and the next slide hopefully is a familiar one too. I'm sure you all remember the placemats that we had that help us keep track of where we were, where we've been, and where we were going. We had 8 workshops and an orientation dating back to March 2018. Also remember that we had one item remaining, and it's always been on the placemat. It's that final board meeting. We now have this meeting scheduled as a board study session on June 29th and a final board meeting either in early July or August. You should have received as part of your packet for tonight. We need to move to the next slide. Sorry. You should have received as part of your package tonight the final Project 2030 study. This is mostly information you've already seen through the various technical memos, but there's one new section, Section 3. This section is an overview of the CAC workshops and the work that we did together. There's also an update to the preferred alternative 5.4. And we'll go into more detail tonight on this update, including an update on the district's financial position, the Project 2030 pre-funding surcharge change, and the project's public engagement strategy that we've developed. And then we'll also go over the next steps. So Missy, I think it's back to you.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to provide some background and give everyone an update on the district's financial position since the last time we met on this project. So in 2019, the CAC selected alternative 5.4 as the preferred alternative, and we'll show you what that alternative is in a moment. Habib will present that. But after the CAC selected the alternative, a couple things have happened, and I wanted to highlight those here on this slide. So the CHWD board approved a rate increase of 11% for fiscal year 2020. So that was after the CAC selected the preferred alternative. But then in fiscal year 2021, the district did not increase water rates or implement a separate funding or surcharge for Project 2030. And then lastly, the district has successfully ended several budget years in a better net position financially than was projected due to expense control. So the pay-as-you-go component of alternative 5.4 has actually improved and less pre-funding is now required. So I'm going to pass it off to Habib Isaac, who will go into the specifics of the preferred alternative and the updates.
Thank you, Missy. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay. Oh, no.
I think we can hear you well, Habib.
Can you still hear me? Can you still hear me? It looks like
Yes.
Yes,
we can.
Okay, great. So I want to start with what was the original alternative 5.4 that was selected as the preferred scenario. If you recall, we were using in almost a majority of the funding options, 3 components, which was pay-as-you-go, which was the pre-funding, the pre-funding, pay-as-you-go throughout the project, as well as debt financing. The average annual spending was going to be 7.8 million. Pre-funding was 22.5 million, and we were estimating around a 4% of total debt to finance the capital projects of Project 2030. And overall, the system replacement by 2080 would be 72%. In this original scenario, the monthly surcharge for a 1-inch meter was $8.63. And we focus on the 1-inch meter because roughly 85% of all meters in the service area are 1 inch. Going to go to the next slide. Now, in terms of the update, as Missy mentioned, after the preferred alternative was selected by the CAC, the board separately, based on their ongoing short-term financials, they did a 11% increase for 2020, which was not anticipated when we were doing Project 2030. Since then, they also didn't do an adjustment for 2020 because of COVID, and as well as 21, the fiscal year we're in right now. And looking at the amount of revenue that would come in based on updated meters, the new baseline amount of revenue coming from the district's base rates, we're now looking at a pre-funding amount of 12.1 million by 2030, which then results in a monthly surcharge of $5.25 for the 1-inch meter, as opposed to $8.63. And this is also going to start, it's anticipated to start in 2022. Originally, we were expecting it to start in 21. So a couple of things that have changed besides the 11%. We also anticipate that we might increase the debt financing a little bit, or bring it forward a little bit to compensate for a little bit of the reduction. And then also the surcharge is going to continue throughout the project because it's a revenue source that's needed. And if it ends up sunsetting at 2030, it's going to end up becoming part of the base rates. So it made more sense to keep it separate so customers could see where those dollars are actually going, and it's a separate amount. But overall, the components that are going to make up Project 2030 is the pre-funding surcharge that will be ongoing, pay-as-you-go, which is additional surplus revenue from district base rates, and then also debt financing. So all those combined overall is going to allow the surcharge to be reduced, and then the revenue adjustments is going to be relatively around the same amount that we were expecting when we presented Project 2030 with the CAC. Moving forward, next slide. So the revised alternative 5.4 that is now incorporated into the study report that we brought forward to the board, the same total cost in 2018 dollars, same annual spending. The pre-funding will be 12.1 million, and keep in mind that could still change slightly based on any new connections that come online that could potentially increase. Debt funding will be somewhere between the 4 to 6%, and then we still result in the same replacement amount of 72% of all the mainline being replaced. And the surcharge, as I mentioned, is going to be reduced from $8.63 to $5.25. So all positive results from the baseline revenues increasing and the district performing well with their cost controls on expenses. And move forward, there we go.
So what we'd like to do is give you time to talk to a few of your CAC members and just say, okay, what do we think we just heard? And what questions do we have? If one of you we'll be putting you into breakout groups. So if you haven't been in a breakout group before, you'll see something come on the screen and you'll just need to accept it. And then you will see some of your fellow CAC members appear in a breakout group, and you'll just have time to talk to each other to identify questions. If one of you in the group would act as a recorder and just record your questions on a piece of paper, and then that way, when you come back from your breakout group, you can read off your questions. We'll then document them into one document, and then the staff and the consultants can look at those during a break, and we'll come back and answer those questions. So let's say in your breakout group, the person who lives closest to the district office. So just think about where you live, identify who lives closest to the district office. You would be the recorder in your group. So if you would just snag a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen and just jot down the questions. And then when we come back together, you'll share those questions with us. So I believe that Brittany, you are putting all the CAC members into breakout groups. And so we'll put you, let's do that for 5 minutes to come up with questions, and then we'll capture those and we'll take a short break. Okay, here you go.
Not sure if it's okay to talk, but I'll just go ahead and speak. And if someone, if I'm not supposed to, someone can chime in.
Brittany?
The only question I would have is, does the boardroom hear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Brittany, could you put Missy and the other project team members in a breakout room of their own?
That's a great idea.
Yes, I can go ahead and do that.
Thank you.
Brittany, can you take, or is it Madeline? Can you take the slides off the screen now so we'll see everyone's face when they come back?
The other view was better because we could see more of us. We're down
There
to
it is. Yeah, there we go. Okay, well, welcome back. Hopefully you had a good conversation in your group and you came up with some good questions. And what we'd like to do now is have you recorders share your questions, and we will be having, Brittany will be typing those into a document, so we'll have them all in one spot. So you'll need to speak a little bit slowly so they can all be typed in. And so who would like to go first? Kimberly, sounds great. Thank you.
You are welcome. I had a good group. So we came up with 4 excellent questions. The first one was just to kind of clarify, I know kind of got to dust off our cobwebs in our brain because it's been a little while. But what our first question was, when does the $5.25 monthly surcharge rate begin? And just, so that was one question.
Should we take it?
The second question.
Okay.
Laura,
you're muted.
We're going to gather all the questions from all the groups, and
Okay.
then everyone other than the consultants and the staff will be able to just stay in the main room, or you can take a break while we figure out who's going to answer what. Then we'll come back and answer them all at one time. So you can just continue, Kimberly, and give us the rest of your questions.
Okay, question number 2. Does the $5.25 surcharge rate increase replace annual water increases? So does the $5.25 surcharge rate increase replace annual water increases? Will the debt increase from 4 to 6%? Will the debt increase from 4 to 6%? Thank you. And then the fourth question is, how will pre-funding gap of the 10.4 million be funded? And that's the difference between the 22.5 million down to the 12.1 million. So that we just want to know how that pre-funding gap would be funded. That was it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Brittany, do you need anything more on that, or you have those?
No, I have those. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. Who will go next?
I will go next.
Great. Thank you.
We had 2 questions. I have one and Jody Ash has the other. We were curious of as I remember, the service life was roughly 50 years service life. How much of our mainline piping now is currently over 50 years old?
Great. Thank you. And how about the second question?
Jody, you have the second question. Jody, you have to unmute yourself again.
Sorry, guys. I initially nuked myself for about 3 minutes when we were trying to figure out what our questions were. And Al's question was a very good one. Are we on target to have the 2030 project ready to go at our current pace? And then I had one other question. No, I guess that's it. So Sorry, that is it for now.
Okay, thank you, Jody. And do any of the consultants just have a question about the question? Because if so, this would be a good time to ask, not answer the question, but does anyone have a question, or are those questions clear? Sounds like they are. Okay, great. Thanks, Jody and Al. And who will go next? Did we have a third group?
I can go next.
Okay, great. Thanks.
We've got 4 questions.
Okay.
Okay, I hope Brittany can type quickly. Let's see, first one's sort of a long one. With the current cost increase on almost everything right now, how will Project 2030 adjust? Will the revenue be increased to the customers, or is the project going to be cut short? Lastly,
let's
sorry.
wait. Did you get all of that, Brittany?
Yes, I capture all of that. Is that a 1-part question though, or is that 3 separate questions?
That's one question.
Great.
3 parts.
Okay, next question is, how and why did the pre-funding drop from 22.5 million to 12.1 million? We don't think that that was really explained fully.
Great, thank
ready
you.
for third question? Okay. I think this is kind of overlapping another question. The original recommendations was 4% cost on debt, and now it's 4 to 6%. Why is that? Fourth question. Why did you put the number of residential meters on the slide? I think that was the 85% number. Is there some significance to that? That's the end of our questions.
Okay, Ray, thank you so much. And again, are there any questions with regard from the staff or consultants with regard to those questions?
So I do have a question. For the last group, the second question, in consideration to why the pre-funding dropped, I just wanted to make sure I heard your number correctly. It was 22.5 million to 12.1 million?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then on the last question, just want to clarify, you want to know the significance of why the number of residential meters was included in the slide presentation?
Yes, I think that was a 85% number, if I recall.
Okay, thank you.
And now that you've all heard all the questions from all the groups, does that raise any other questions that you'd like to have answered? We can just open it if there's another question. Okay, sounds like not. So what we are going to do is the staff and consultants are going to now go out into their own breakout group to look at the questions and identify who's going to answer those for you. The rest of you can just stay in the main group, and you can be on a break. You can run down the hall, you can go get something to drink, or you can sit and chat with your fellow CAC members. And if you do, you might want to find out what is everyone looking forward to this next year now that we're coming out of COVID. And so it's just an opportunity just to chat with each other. So we'll have 10 to 15 minutes, and then let's say 15, and we'll all come back together at that point and answer all of your questions. And then if you have more questions from that, we'll have time to do that also. So thanks. And so we will start your break and our work now.
Well, how is everybody? Most of us here are healthy, I hope.
Well, we're all here, that's for sure.
Yeah, who's that? Who am I not seeing, but I'm hearing?
Oh, that was me. That's Suzanne.
Hi, there you are. Now I see you. It was magic.
I'm on the top row of.
I guess I just I just forwarded it to Habib. I guess I need to forward it to Andrew also. My apologies here. And then Susan, I'll forward it to you too because you weren't in it.
Missy, would you be able to share that on the screen as we come up with our answers?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me just put that. Okay. So questions. Let me do a save as and put it to my desktop here so I don't mess it up. Okay. All right, let me pull this up. Okay. Can you guys see the questions? I can zoom in here. Oops. Oh, what's going on? Why can't I edit this? Looks like it's still, oh, there we go, edit. So do Q1. All right, so for the first question, when does the 525 monthly surcharge rate begin? I think can you guys hear me? Oh,
Yeah.
Hillary's on too, perfect. I'm assuming that's contingent upon board, you know, we're gonna present this to the board on June 29th. And
Yeah,
then,
assuming it's January of 2022.
right, that's our assumption if the
Right.
board approves it.
Right.
And the Prop 2, yeah.
Hillary, you were talking and we can't hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so that's right. Assuming that the board were to include this in their budget process for 2022, it would be effective January 2022. Yes,
Okay.
that's the assumption.
So how do you want to say it specifically, or are you fine with what Habib said?
I'm sorry, what I did cut the tail end. So can you repeat, Habib?
Oh, I said we're assuming it's January 2022. And granted, board needs to approve it, but that's the assumption. It's January 2022.
Correct, right, but contingent upon board approval and including it in their budget and rate setting process for 2022. Or you could just say, budget process instead of getting into the rates.
Okay. So Q2 is, does the 525 per month rate replace annual water increases?
No, it does not. CHWD base rates will be separate. They would cover other aspects.
Who's responding to this, I guess? Are you going to respond to this, Hillary? Okay.
No, it should be, so where's Susan? There you are, Susan. Sorry, I couldn't find your window there. Susan should reply to this one. The CHWD base rate will still cover other non-water main related aspects to our CIP, as well as operations and maintenance costs.
So we will not have time to go through all the answers now. We're going to run out of time. We just need to decide who's going to answer this. And if there's anyone where there is a specific question, but otherwise we're going to have to get back to them like in 10 minutes. So I don't think we can go through each of these questions and identify the answers.
Well, let's go as fast as we can, because I'll bet you we can get most of them.
Yeah.
Okay, got you though, Laura.
I'll just put no.
No, CHWD will still need to cover O&M, operations, maintenance, and the non-water main portion of the CIP or capital.
If you wouldn't mind, I don't think you heard us say something like similar to all previous CAC presentations, the surcharge is a separate component. Like we've always presented it that way.
Yeah.
Too.
I would add that to what I just said.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, debt increase from 4 to 6%. I think.
Oh,
the
just a minute, just a minute, just a minute.
Hurry.
Go ahead.
Habib, I think you should take this one.
Sure, I got it. Already got an answer. So I was going to say not necessarily, but this is one component being leveraged if additional proceeds are needed or project cost increases.
Oh, I wasn't going to say that. I was going to say, no, this is actually one of our strategies is to bring debt up forward and increase it slightly in order to create more intergenerational equity and to smooth out these expenses and take pressure off rates in the here and now or surcharge. That's what I would say. That's the more politically, I think, savvy thing to say, because you got a lot of seniors and older people who don't want to get walloped with rates on the front end. So part of it is we're bringing debt into it. One, because, and you could even talk about the fact that money is historically very inexpensive. That was something Mike Nishimoto said in the room here, across the room down the hall. But the other one is that in order to achieve more intergenerational equity and to smooth out those expenses, and therefore the revenue requirements in the early years, we've actually brought debt forward and brought it up a little bit. I hope you can get away saying that. Is that fair to say, Habib? Because that would be the best thing to say if you can get away with it.
That's fine. Yeah, it's a moving component. So I'm
Yeah,
fine.
but again, this is about being politically astute now.
Right. I'm saying it's fine saying what you said. It's okay.
Okay, good. So just be real clear about that, because that'll allay some of the elderly and older people's fears and concerns, and that'll be a part of our messaging.
But the specific question is, why is it going four potentially to 6? And this is one way that the surcharge is able to go down.
Well, yes, that's true. Okay, but it's because you're smoothing out the expenses by bringing down the revenue requirements in the early years. Okay, so how will pre-funding gap of 10.4 million be funded? That's because, Habib, right, it's an ongoing.
Well, baseline revenue went up.
Yep.
Right, 11%, and the debt going from 4 to anywhere between 4 and 6 also covers that difference. So baseline revenue and debt being adjusted.
Perfect. Isn't it also that the surcharge is now going to be ongoing?
And surcharge is ongoing, correct. So three items.
Perfect.
I'm not going to show this to the CAC. I'll just put up the questions, or maybe Brittany will put up the questions. I'll go ahead and email this to you all though, just so we have it. Okay, so how much of the mainline piping is current?
Sorry, I can just hear you through the wall. Okay, whatever. Keep going. I think we only have like 3 or 4 minutes left.
Are you talking to me?
We should respond to each one of these questions, though. I think we weren't going to go over much by 3 minutes.
No. I know, and I was going to say we stopped at 7:14, so we should be okay. We got 6 more minutes, I think.
Yeah. So the question about how much of the mainline piping is currently over 50 years old, I think he also asked or mentioned that the service life of a water main is 50 years, and that's incorrect. It's more like 70 years. So.
Yeah, so if it's okay, I mean, we can tackle this. And what I think he intended was just to talk about the likelihood of failure. And so I can quickly just review all the different factors that contribute to likelihood of failure, in addition to pipe age. Pipe age was the big one we used, but there was also pipe material, pipe vulnerability, and historical main breaks.
And I think he was wondering how much of our mainline piping is currently over 50 years old, assuming that once it gets over 50, it needs to be replaced. Well, that number is 70, and just because it's old doesn't mean it needs to be replaced. There's other factors, such as what you just mentioned. Perfect. Is that what you're thinking about saying?
Yep.
Okay, do we have an amount of piping that's over 50 or 70 years old? Do you have that off the top of your head?
I couldn't put my fingers on an exact number because we didn't really use those in our model. We used the survival probability.
Yeah.
But I think it's approximately 40%.
Currently, yeah.
Currently, yeah.
Okay. So you're good answering that question, Andrew?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
And then are we on target to have the project 2030 ready to go at current pace?
Yes.
Yeah, and the plan is to, the first step is to complete or to do the surcharge component. And then the next 7 years, 8 years until 2030 is the planning period, which is what we are beginning. We have an implementation piece in the report, and those steps that are defined in the report are the next items that we'll be doing. And then come project 2030 is the plan is to start increasing our water main replacement.
Yeah.
Is that a good
That's
response?
Yeah.
I can
I send like a message through chat. Is it only to this room right now?
I don't know. I'd have to look.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
take a chance.
So we had issues when we did our dry run. That's why we're doing this a little differently.
Okay, no problem.
And you have left to go, and then we need to come back.
I didn't hear what you said. We have what?
4 minutes.
Okay.
Roll. We gotta get this done.
And what I'll do is I will read the questions, but I won't be able to see who's going to answer it because this won't be up on the screen, but you each will know which ones you're answering, correct?
Yeah, I'll email this to the group.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. This one, Missy, is to say that project 2030 costs in the future were indexed to increase as part of our projections.
Okay, so inflation was factored into this revenue.
Yeah, inflation was factored in.
Okay, that's a great answer.
Wait, for question 7?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
With the current cost increase, is that what they mean about inflation? Okay, yeah, exactly. So Habib, you got that one. I don't need to type anything there.
Yeah, that's fine. And then this next one, same as question number 4. It's the same responses. It's really no different than question 4.
Right. And if we need to do a deeper dive, we can, in real time.
That's really the 10 million is the same as 22 to 12 million. It's the 10 million gap.
Yeah.
And then this one we could emphasize, now it's 4 to 6%. Why is that? And I have, this will provide more intergenerational equity and now require current customers to pay for all project 2030 costs up front.
Right, say that last thing again.
And now require current customers to pay for all of the 2030 costs up front.
Sorry, I didn't hear the not. Very good. Excellent.
And then this does have significance. The surcharge increases based on the size of the meter, and bigger size meters will pay more than the 525 based on their capacity in the water system. And that's why we identified how many meters are 1 inch. So
But I think it's important to note the majority of the meters are 1 inch. That's why it was presented that way, I believe.
Right, but if everyone's going to get charged the same, then it's irrelevant. But I think that's also why, because the surcharge will be more for bigger size meters.
Yes, it definitely will be more. Yeah, that's important to say. But I think just so people get an idea, the majority of the meters, it's a residential, and that's why it was presented. It was kind of like the baseline.
And
right.
who is answering 1 and who's answering 2, just so that I can see?
Habib, and then number 2 is Susan.
Okay. So I think we're going to get called back now.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and close it out. So you got to have about 60 seconds to wrap it up.
I stopped sharing my screen. I'm gonna go ahead and email this to you all. So you should see it in your inbox. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Hi all, I've moved offices, so good to be back, and we have now an opportunity to hear answers to your questions. So let's start with the first question, which was, when does the $5.25 monthly surcharge rate begin? And Habib?
Sure. So as part of our modeling, we're anticipating this to start January 2022, but keep in mind, we have to bring this forward to the board and it has to be part of their budgetary process. And those procedures will occur in late summer to early fall.
Does that answer your question? Great. Okay. Question 2, does the $5.25 rate increase replace annual water increases? Susan?
Sure. So the $5.25 monthly rate is a surcharge that will be separate component. So the CHWD based rates will still need to cover our ongoing like O&M expenses and other capital improvement expenses.
Great. Question 3, will the debt increase from 4 to 6%? Habib?
And the answer is no, not necessarily. We're just showing what the cap will be. And that's going to just provide us the ability to cover some of that, offset some of that shortage that was identified, and then also generate more intergenerational equity. So then not all the customers of today aren't paying for the full Project 2030 bill. And it's spread over the life of the project.
Does that answer your question? Great. Okay, question 4, how will pre-funding gap of 10.4 million be funded? Habib?
So this is a function of, a lot of parts working together. So the way that this is going to be fulfilled is, one, when we first presented this, the baseline revenue of district base rates was a lot lower, but with that 11% increase, that allows the surcharge to come down. Also, the debt that identified being adjusting from anywhere from 4 to 6, that's going to provide some flexibility there. And then lastly, we mentioned that the surcharge is going to be ongoing throughout the project 2030 time period, just so customers can clearly see that those are the dollars going to the project. So with all those components combined, that's how the $10 million gap is being funded.
Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Question 5, how much of the mainline piping is currently over 50 years old? Andrew?
So in our study, we actually used an average expected life of our pipeline network of 70 years old. So I'll answer the question using that age. And currently the district has a small percentage that is over 70 years old, but due to the development that occurred between 1960 and 1980, the majority of our pipe network will reach 70 years old between 2030 and 2040. And if I could share a map, I actually found a slide from our third workshop. So let me see if I can share this really quick. Can folks see that?
No.
Not yet. Oh, here it comes.
Here it is.
There it is.
So if you recall, this was a map we developed through our asset inventory where we researched and discovered the date of installation of 99% of the pipes in our network. And you can see the majority are red, green, and blue for dates of installation in the decades of 1960, 1970, and 1980. I also want to just highlight another thing. I'll just let this on the screen for a second.
I think that previous slide also 23. I was looking at that earlier today. That's kind of a helpful slide too. It gives you like the percentage of water mains, the installation date.
Exactly. So this slide shows that wave of main replacements needed based on an average life expectancy of 70 years old. And I'll just highlight something else, that pipe age is only one predictor that we used in our study for likelihood of failure. We used 3 others. Pipe age was the main one we used, but we also used pipe material as a identifier of likelihood of failure, historical main breaks, and vulnerability due to exposure in the environment, like creek crossings. So that might have been too long, Laura, but hopefully that
I think
answers
it's helpful to refresh everybody's memory on that. Does that answer the question? So if we can stop the screen sharing, Andrew.
You got it.
Thank you for finding that. Okay, question 6, are we on target to have the Project 2030 ready to go at the current pace? Missy?
Yes, we are. Obviously the first step is this planning period between now and 2030. So kind of the first step is to get the surcharge implemented. And, that's why we're here tonight. And then the next 5 to 10 years is really more of a planning period. We do have in the Project 2030 study an implementation chart that talks about various things that need to occur between now and 2030. Currently we're on track, but we just started. But the plan is to keep checking in on the study and making sure we're completing on the various tasks. And that's part of the engineering group's responsibility, is to manage this project as we move forward. But we are currently on target and ready to go.
Great, thank you, Missy. Question 7, with the current cost increases, how will Project 2030 adjust? Will revenue be increased to customers, or will the project be cut short? Habib?
Yeah, so in our original modeling, we accounted for inflation over time using the engineer's news record average increase in cost year over year. But also there was some increases that were unforeseen. This is also why we have a range in the debt of 4 to 6 to offset those type of unknown expenses.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thanks, Ray. Question 8, how and why did pre-funding drop from 22.5 million to 12.1 million? What is the explanation? Habib?
Yeah, so this is very similar to the previous question of how are we going to cover the $10.4 million gap? It's the same, somewhat the same question. So just to refresh your memory on my previous answer, we're using many components. So the base rates of the district went up by 11%, which wasn't identified. And then we are going to bring forward the debt a little bit earlier in the project timeline. So then we can leverage, proceeds coming online. And also is going to allow us to continue that surcharge throughout the project timeline, is also going to provide some flexibility with reducing the surcharge need.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Question 9. The original recommendation was 4% cost on debt. Now it's 4 to 6%. Why is that? Habib?
Sure. So one is to account for that funding gap, that we have the ability to get additional proceeds. 2, it provides more intergenerational equity, as I mentioned. So current customers aren't fronting the bill of the tire cost. And also keep in mind, this is something we have to look at on an annual basis or every few years, because it's also a function of what are the revenue adjustments for all the way through 2030 and through each decade. So it's something that is dynamic, and we constantly update it. But we wanted to show what a cap would be, so that's why we showing a range of 4 to 6%.
And question 10. Why did the number of residential meters get included on the slide, and what's the significance for the 85% number? Habib?
So as part of our CAC presentations, we, if you recall, the surcharge was going to be a rate that increases based on the size of the meter. So everyone that has a meter that's more than 1 inch will pay more than the 525. But we identify the number of customers that fall in that 1 inch size. So it's clear that 85% of all customers will pay that amount. But that's why that's the significance, is that it's not everyone's going to be charged that amount. Those with a bigger size meter will be paying more based on the capacity they take of the water system.
So that those are the answers to the 10 questions. Are there any other questions that now come to mind? Or does that cover all of what you have?
Down, it'll help. Just that.
Actually, I have a follow-up question.
Okay, Rick.
Just to clarify, that $5.25 surcharge, is that a constant, or is that something that's a variable that will change over the life of the project?
That's a very good question. We did have scenarios where it would increase. In this 5.4, it's constant by meter size. So the 1 inch will be charged $5.25 through the life of the project.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought I remembered, but I wasn't sure, so I appreciate that.
Great. How about any other questions that anyone else has? Okay. Well, that looks like we've covered the questions. And so I will turn this back to Richard or actually, I'm going to turn it back to Madeline. Sorry, I'm sitting at Madeline's desk, so I need to move now. And
Excuse me, Laura.
Let her come back and make the presentation here. So I'm going to stop the video shortly, and
Excuse me,
she'll be right
Laura.
here.
This is Hillary. Laura.
Yes,
if I may.
Hillary.
Yeah, I do want to provide, I want to tack on to Habib's comment.
Okay, great.
For the financial planning purposes, it shows as a fixed surcharge. That being said, obviously, we're projecting out, 50 years in the lifespan of the project. If there are variables that are out of our control, and the further out you go in out years, projections become less and less reliable, that would require a future board to revisit that surcharge. That certainly is within the discretion of a future board. So I don't want to give the impression to say that that $5.25 will never change. For the current financial modeling purposes, based on the best information that we have at this time, that is how it's modeled. But again, the future boards have the discretion if there's inflationary issues that exceed anybody's expectations or anything that's anybody's able to project here in 2021. Certainly that has to be revisited. Thanks.
I think you had actually discussed that a year ago. I think now listening to you, I think that was brought up before. So I do appreciate that clarification, Ellery.
You bet.
All right, well, I'm going to physically move and turn this computer back to Madeline.
All right, thanks for bearing with us during that technical difficulty. I'm going to reshare the PowerPoint slides. All right, so you should see on the screen a slide titled Public Engagement. So I'm going to kind of walk through the next steps for Project 2030 and how we carry this forward. I know up to this point, you have all been very involved in the technical decisions and financial modeling related to the project. So now that the project is nearing completion, talking a little bit about how we carry that forward. So as a district, we've spent the last 2 years really building our communications and public engagement program. On the current slide, you'll see a few of the techniques that we've been using and that we have in our toolbox. So we've built out our social media channels. We have a Facebook account, a Twitter account, a newly launched Instagram account, and we also participate on Nextdoor. We've started to ramp up our media relations and work with the local news media, both print and video, to get our stories out there. We also do print media, so newsletters, bill inserts, hard copy mailers that go out. We updated our website last year and did a total revamp, so that's an important resource we can use to help tell the Project 2030 story. A lot of our customers visit the website to pay their bill, so we can help tell the story there. We also have a video, so you may have seen in the past, we've done a few videos on Project 2030, and we'll continue to use that as well. We have FAQ, so frequently asked questions that live on the website and also are provided to staff members in case we get any questions about Project 2030. And then lastly, we do presentations to community groups to share with them the work that the Customer Advisory Committee has been doing. So typically at least once a year, we go out to all of the neighborhood area associations in the city. We also visit with groups in Orangeville and in the other areas we cover and meet with groups like the Chamber and Rotary. So we plan on continuing to do all of those activities to help get the word out about Project 2030, but we also need a little bit of help from the CAC. So on the next slide, we'll get into the Customer Advisory Committee's role in helping spread the word on Project 2030. So we're asking that you help continue to educate your fellow customers about the project and all the hard work that you've done. We have created an information packet for you all that you'll be receiving after this meeting that has important information for you. Also includes an FAQ sheet in case you receive questions about the project. So you have answers in case your neighbors or fellow customers ask them. Of course, always feel free to reach out to us and we can help as well, but want to make sure that you're equipped with the necessary information. We're also asking that you help out by attending future board meetings when we will be presenting the Customer Advisory Committee recommendation to the Citrus Heights Water District Board. The next meeting is currently scheduled for June 29th to do a study session on your recommendation. I know we'll touch on that a little bit more later in the meeting and you'll be getting follow-up emails and calls about that, but just to give you an example of an instance where we might request that you come back and help tell the story of Project 2030. So before we go on, any questions about where we've been and where we're going related to communications and public engagement around the project? All right.
Thank you, Madeline.
Thank you, Laura. So I'll turn it over to Missy.
Great, thank you. So I just wanted to show this slide one more time before we jump to kind of the next steps. So here's the revised alternative as we had presented it to you. So, you know, that's still alternative 5.4, but the pre-funding amount has changed to 12.1 million to a monthly surcharge of 525 a month. And then the percent of debt is, you know, 4 to 6%. And the system replaced by 2080 is still at 72%. Just wanted to kind of just reiterate that as we move to the CAC's consideration.
So we've answered the questions. Are there any more questions, or shall I turn it now to Richard to speak about the consideration of the revised policy recommendation? Any further questions?
Somebody needs to ask a question that's really complex and difficult because Richard just had to step out for a moment. But now he's back in, so it doesn't have to be as long a question.
Thank you for clarifying that. So Richard, it's time to turn it back to you to talk about the consideration of the revised policy recommendation.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is to consider the revised policy recommendation. And just so we clarify what there's 3 parts. The technical team recommendation to the CAC is considering are as follows. Endorse and recommend the Project 2030 study, which includes the revised alternative 5.4 as the strategy for water main replacements, including the accompanying funding targets specified in the study. Number 2, forward the above policy recommendations to the Citrus Heights Water District Board for discussion and possible action. And recommendation number 3, recommend that the Citrus Heights Water District Board direct the development of an education and public engagement strategy supporting the adoption and implementation of Project 2030. Do we have a motion to approve the proposed recommendations?
Also move, Ray Bulkey.
Second. And do we have a second?
Second.
And we heard a second from someone. Was that Jody?
That was me. Yes, yes, sir. That was me.
Thank you. And then Madeline, may we have a roll call vote?
Yes, so first going through the list who were here at the beginning of the meeting, and then I'll open it up to others. Jody Ash.
Aye.
Kimberly Berg.
Yes.
Ray Bulkey.
Aye.
Michael Govell.
Aye.
Suzanne Guthrie.
Aye.
Andrew Johnson.
Aye.
Richard Moore.
Yes.
Richard Moses.
Aye.
Mike Nishimura.
Aye.
Alan Utzig.
Aye.
Are there any other CAC members present on the line who I did not call?
I'm here. Deborah Cartwright.
Oh, okay. Deborah, how would you like to vote?
Aye.
Thank you. So we have 11 yeses on the vote. We do not have a quorum for this meeting. We're short by 1 vote, but we can still use this vote for your informal recommendation to the board on June 29th. And we will let the board know that all CAC members who were present did support the motion. All right.
Thank you, Madeline. And so I guess I turn this then back over to Missy at this point.
Yes. Thank you. So I believe the next slide is next steps. Yes. So as we had mentioned, there's a couple next steps. So we do have a board study session scheduled for Tuesday, June 29th at 6 p.m. And at that meeting, the CAC leadership and CHWD technical team, pretty much the same individuals that presented tonight, will present the overall Project 2030 study and the revised CAC policy recommendation alternative 5.4 to the board. And then the plan is to hold a special meeting. We don't have a specific date yet, but after the June 29th meeting, we'll have a specific date for that. But we're anticipating early July, early August to have that meeting. And the similar actions or recommendations will be presented to the board for consideration. The board, we will recommend the board to consider the CAC recommendation to adopt the Project 2030 study, which includes the revised alternative 5.4 as a strategy for water main replacements. The next item is the board to provide consensus direction concerning the accompanying funding targets specified in the study. And then the third recommendation is the board to direct the CHWD to develop an education and public engagement strategy supporting the adoption and implementation of Project 2030. And with that, I think that is the completion of the Project 2030 presentation.
Thank you, Missy. And so now we'll hear about other reports. First, from your new Director of Operations, Rebecca Scott.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
We can.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you, Laura. So I wanted to let you all know that we will be coming back together we're hoping the fall to talk about the meter replacement project. And we'd love to give you all an update on that. We are nearing completion on that. And so we're excited to provide an update and just let you all know about what we've been doing over the past year with the meter study. And we'll be looking forward to sharing more information with you soon. Thank you. And then also I'd like to introduce Ray Reilly for an additional report.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Oh, thank you, Rebecca. I have a captive audience here, so I felt obliged to make a few comments. Now I'm in a room where I have a laptop that has one projector, one camera, and then I'm looking into another camera. I'm going to try to do this by looking at the right camera so I don't look like I'm staring off into space. A lot of what we do as board members in general relates to sitting down and listening and listening and listening some more about topics, and then we get to make a decision. This CAC process is a really good example of what it takes to go through the process of making sound decisions for good governance. The reason I'm on this board is 5-6 years ago, almost 7 years ago, there was a project going on, and the former general manager, Bob Churchill, talked about it to me at Rotary and at a couple of other events. And I became interested in that project. So I started attending water board meetings, and I attended them for about 6 or 8 months. And then Mr. Dion had to resign from the board, and I was appointed to serve on the board of directors. But I had taken a lot of time to learn the process, so I thought I was almost ready to be a board member. A lot of you have gone through a process now that is not unlike that. You've spent the better part of 3 years touching on water issues. And so now those of you who are in this room today are excellent potential board members for the future for Citrus Heights or for San Juan. Now, if you look at the map of the San Juan water, the Citrus Heights Water District, this is how governance works here in our district. And you may have seen this, you may not have looked at this or paid much attention to it. We have a 3-director board which is unusual. Most boards are 5 or more. And we're elected by division. So there's Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. Up until last year, we were elected at large, even though we had to live in a division. We were elected by voters through the whole district. Now, we're only going to be elected by voters in our division. So I'm in Division 2. I only am going to be elected or not elected by the people in my division instead of the district as a whole. And this is a very complex issue. It relates to the Voting Rights Act and how voting should be done in a complex district. So I want you to look at this and think about where you live and who your director is and which division you're living in. And if you feel compelled to talk to them about what's going on, you might want to learn a little bit more about our thought processes. You know who the director is that you're voting for. Now, if we go on to the next slide, we'll see the San Juan Water District. Now, we could probably spend 2 hours talking about how our water supply comes from Folsom Lake, that we have rights to different buckets of water that are in Folsom Lake, and the water is treated way up there, well, in the transition between the green and the purple. On the right side of the screen is the San Juan Water District Treatment Plant. And that is where we get our water. 90% of our water is surface water treated by the San Juan Water District, and then it flows downhill by gravity. So we don't have pumps, it's just gravity, water falling by gravity down to our district. We buy water from the San Juan Water District, from their wholesale agency as the Citrus Heights Water District, and we sell water to our customers retail. The San Juan Water District also has a retail component. Now, last year, they had to redistrict themselves. San Juan was not by district or division at all. It was all at large. And historically, since Folsom Lake was built and the district was formed, a majority of their board has always lived in that purple area in the upper right-hand quadrant, the Granite Bay area. So now they're going to be, in the next election, just like we are, they're going to be elected by district, or sometimes they're called by divisions. And those individuals will have to live in those areas. So you have Division 1 in the upper right. Then you have Division 2 that it's kind of hard to read, but it takes part of Folsom, the top of Fair Oaks, and a chunk of Citrus Heights. And their Division 3 is mostly Citrus Heights Water District. Division 4 is all Citrus Heights Water District. Division 5 is primarily Fair Oaks. So you can look at this map and you can look through and see if you live in an area that is in Citrus Heights Water District, you could run for the San Juan Water District Board of Directors, and you can consider serving on the San Juan Water District Board of Directors if you have an interest now in water. It's a little bit complex. You need to look at the maps. You need to know where you live, because just because you could be running against, all three of you could live in the same neighborhood and you'd all be running against each other for one seat. So what I'm trying to get to here is I have a real concern that as Hillary has done an extraordinary job developing leadership here in the district, the staff here is great. And there's a lot of leadership development that goes on here. So we have great leaders who are capable of stepping up and doing a good job. There's not as much forethought given to developing leadership of elected officials. And as an elected, you have to go through the process, and you have to learn how to go through the process just like you all have in the CAC. And if you remember back to your first meeting, I think many of the members of the CAC looked a little bit dazed and confused at that first meeting. There was so much information, you were overwhelmed. Some of you were overwhelmed. And now you're making a recommendation to the board of directors for how to run a project that's going to go on for 30 or 50 years. Most of us will be gone, perhaps even before this is into 10 years of its process. But you've learned and you are capable of making policy decisions and being a part of good governance. And if it's not you, you know someone younger than you who may be interested in good governance. Now, this is the only last request I have. Well, you can go to the next, the last slide. This again shows the district and how the seats are voted on. It's just like in Citrus Heights, you have 2 seats open in 2022. You have 3 seats open. It alternates 3 and 2. So that's the electoral process. So you need to know what's going on if you decide you're going to run. But the point I'm trying to make is developing electoral leadership takes time and effort, and it takes sitting in chairs and being uncomfortable, listening to the same conversation a bunch of times, and then getting to vote. Now, I've been listening to the CAC meetings for 3 years, more or less. We've got another meeting tonight that we're finished that is great information. And then we've got a meeting on the 29th of June, where this is going to be presented to us formally as board members. So now we can, as board members, we can start thinking about the decision we're going to make at another meeting 2, 4, 8 weeks later. Congressman Ossie, I'm acquainted with him, he talked about being a good elected official means the people who have the strongest bladders win, because you have to sit through these long meetings to get to the point where you're going to make a vote. And the important thing for you to do now, and I would make this request, is that in the next year, you consider attending 6 board meetings. And they don't have to be water district board meetings. I'd love to see you here. We seldom have guests. I would love to see more people sitting through our meetings and asking us hard questions. But I'd like you to sit through a couple of meetings at Citrus Heights, or go to Fair Oaks, or go to San Juan, go to the city council, go to a school board. Sit through those meetings and learn what good governance takes. And if you're inspired to work hard, put in the time, and think through how to make policy decisions, you will be a good elected official. And good governance takes the people. There were great questions, those 9, 10 questions after the presentation. All of them were the kinds of questions that are important to ask before you make a decision. You ask the staff what they meant by that, and then you come back and say, I understand now with the more detail. But you are the future of our water districts. You are the future of every other district. And if you're not, perhaps a son, daughter, nephew, niece, neighbor who's a few years younger than us, than some of us, would be someone you can talk to about going to these meetings, learning the good governance process, and be prepared to take a seat and make good decisions, because we're looking out 70, 80 years. We're trying to set up the future citizens, constituents, friends, neighbors, children, grandchildren, with a water supply that is safe, priced reasonably, and readily available. That's what we're doing here, because most of us will not see what it looks like in 2080. It's just not going to happen. But I hope that this process has shown you that we can make impactful decisions now for the next generation, and that being an elected is a privilege and an opportunity to have a vision for what will happen to coming generations. So that's my soapbox for tonight, to encourage you to go to 6 meetings somewhere in the next year. I don't care what they are. And you have to sit down from the beginning gavel, which Richard hit so profoundly tonight, to the closing gavel of that meeting so you can see what it's like. And that is how we can make our communities better. Thanks again. I appreciate all of you coming to so many of these meetings. I genuinely know what it takes to be there, and you all did a great job. And of course, I want to thank the staff, because if you look at that 250-page document, it's a lot of material, but it is perhaps one of the best documents I've ever seen provided by staff to a board. It's coming to a board ultimately, but to you and then to the board. It's an elegant document, and it is an example of good governance. And I appreciate all of the staff, from Hillary to everyone who works here at the district. In fact, there were a couple of guys on my street this morning because there was a break in one of the meter box by the street. So I'm going out and I see 3 guys from the water district getting ready to start digging to make sure the water's not leaking. So from the leadership here to the team in the field, the Citrus Heights Water District is well served, and it's been well served by you all here at the CAC. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. That was terrific. So now, Richard, we'll turn it back to you for public comment. And I think we can take the screen. I think we can just go back to see all the pictures of everyone in the group, and we don't necessarily need to see the screen.
Thank you, Ray, for those words. And hopefully some of us can come out there and do that. Right now, at this time, we'll open the public comment period for items that do not appear on the agenda. Members of the public may make comments for up to 3 minutes on any item that does not appear on the agenda. Do we have any public comments at this time?
We have not received any requests for public comments. Anyone on the line who would like to make a public comment? All right, hearing none, we can close public comment.
Right, then this closes the public comment period. All right, and I'll turn it back over to Laura at this time.
Great, thank you, Richard. So we are wrapping up early, but before we leave, it would be important to hear from each of the CAC members something that you learned tonight or that you're taking away from this process. And so why don't we start with Rick, and then I'll just call each person's name.
Actually, I appreciated the stump speech from Ray. I learned a lot more about how the new voting laws has affected both Citrus Heights and San Juan, and that's really good. I appreciate the explanation, and I do appreciate your interest in trying to grow the leadership. I guess that was the biggest thing I learned.
Great, thank you, Rick. Al, how about you?
Well, I'm a fairly new member of the CAC, so I was glad to learn more about Project 2030 and some of the financing parts of it that I didn't know anything about. So thank you for that nice review.
Great, thank you. Ray Bolke?
Yes, I'm kind of fascinated by all of the different ways things need to be changed by vote or by this influx in the meantime to adjust as necessary. And I thought it was pretty interesting to see some of the recommendations changing a little bit here, a little bit there, as economy changes and everything else. So interesting process. Glad I could be on board here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Michael?
Yeah, I appreciate being on the board and the whole process going on. And it feels real good to see that we might have a light at the end of the tunnel.
Great, thank you. Kimberly?
Yeah, I was just looking at the calendar, and it was actually almost 2 years to the day that we actually voted on the alternatives. It was June
Yeah.
11th of 2019. So here we are, June 8th. We voted back then. We voted for alternative 5.4, and I like what I heard tonight about reducing the pre-funding. That'll save us 10.4 million, and then also lowering the surcharge down by about $3 a month. So hey, every little bit helps, and it'll help us kind of sell it to our friends and our neighbors and our customers. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Mike?
I've learned a lot from this whole process. It's been a long process, and it's too bad that COVID had to interrupt everything for us, but appreciate all the information that I've learned from it.
Great, thank you. Andrew?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go. Yeah, it's very interesting. I learned quite a bit, and actually each time I come, more questions come up. I heard this evening we're one short of a vote of a quorum, so I maybe it's a question, but 9 or the percentage to get the vote, we were one short, but that's maybe a takeaway for me, is to realize how that comes about, or was there going to be, and again, this is a question for me, not necessarily the panel, to go do some homework. And then I'm glad also to see the rate reduction. That's something good to go talk to the neighbors about, that be informed of what's happening at the board. It's quite important. Maybe not for us who are not going to be around here in 2080, but definitely our children and grandchildren and neighbors in our community. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Jody?
Hi. Well, this is my second, I think, full meeting, and I have learned so much, I have to say, about the necessity for the strategic planning to get where we want to go, the dollars and cents and how they line up, and how to pre-fund and the surcharge. I'm thrilled to be learning it, and some of it's starting to make sense as well. And I believe it was Richard who gave us the pep talk about good governance, and that was good to hear. I do some service. I sit on some other boards and committees, and it was inspiring. One of those people that kind of believes that it is up to us to help the future look better. So thank you, one and all, each of you and all of you. Thank you for pitching in with us.
Thank you, Jody. And that was Ray Reilly, one of the district's board members. Great, thank you. Suzanne?
Well, two things, and I really appreciated what Richard said, but also the fact that Citrus Heights is so supportive in a real valuing way of the work of the board. This is not the only one that I've been on. The other one was in the past, and that district was, they were happy to have us, but it was like in name only, and I really appreciate here. As you're providing us with additional sales talk material as we educate, I think that's something that would be helpful. Certainly for me, I am in a condominium unit. I have an HOA, and they are going to be interested in what this means both for the organization, since they run a lot of water that I don't. So I could talk about as an individual, but I think it would be a better presentation to the board if I could talk to them about what it means for someone that has a pipe larger than 1 inch. So if we could include that kind of information, I see a couple of other heads nod. For some of us, that would be quite useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And I know Madeline had indicated that we'll be coming back to all of you as part of the communication process. Are there any other CAC members that I didn't call on? Hillary, did you want to make any comments?
Yes, thank you very much, Laura. I want to thank all of the customers who step forward to take an enormous amount of time out of their lives to help us plan the future of your water district. This has been a wonderful process to be a part of. We've learned and we've grown along the way. And as you can see, we're flexible. We're flexible to changing conditions, both positive and challenging. I'm very pleased that our technical team, and I'm very, very proud of the work that they've done, have been able to work these numbers in such a way that we could try to bring down that surcharge by a substantial amount to bring back to this customer advisory committee for your consideration and recommendation. That was a major focus of ours as we took a hard look at our updated financials, and I'm very pleased with the work that again, our technical team has done. So thank you very, very much. And thank you very much to the Customer Advisory Committee and to the board for your support in this process to bring it back to you for your consideration here at the end of the month. Thank you very much.
Do any of the other managers or staff, would you like to make a comment?
This is Missy. Just like to reiterate Hillary Strauss's comments. Thank you very much for all of your time and commitment to this project. I know it's been a long haul, but we really do appreciate your participation and support moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, well then I will turn it back over to Richard to close us out.
Thank you. I want to make just some final comments here that for the last 2 weeks here, I've been working with the guys here and with this meeting, and just having just this meeting tonight, there was a lot of leaps and bounds that these guys did to get this going tonight. Working with them and all the paperwork and all the rewrites and everything just for this meeting alone were just amazing, and worked with us. And even we lost power the one time, and we didn't lose water, but we lost power, and had to do it via phone for a while. But we got this meeting going, and just so you guys know, these guys have done a lot of work getting this going with this tonight. And I want to thank Ray for about the how the water district is set up, and 2022 is just right around the corner to put those in there with those seats opening. And so my one final last comment is that I have 3 finalists. All right, I have Al with X605 and Night 13 as the trains for the backgrounds. I have Ray with his palm trees and beach as the background. And last, Rick with the classic guitars in the background. So those are our 3 finalists for the backgrounds with the most excellent backgrounds that we have. All right, mine's just a plain board in the background. So thank you guys. Those were some great backgrounds on your screens. So at this time, thank you all for attending. We look forward to seeing everyone on June 29th when we take the CAC's recommendations to the board. The Citrus Heights Water District will be following up with you all about the meeting logistics. That concludes our meeting. This meeting is adjourned at, call it 8:24. I won't hit it as hard.
Great.